Okay, I'm back, and you should now recognize what the force of gravity is. So, the force of gravity, we introduced that in one of our previous lessons, was a negative because gravity pulls things in. So, that's what the negative sign is there for. And then you have mass number one, mass number two. They're separated by a distance r, and so they're going to experience a force of gravity that's going to try to pull them together. And so we found out in a previous lesson that it's the force of gravity of a star pulling on a planet that causes it to go into an orbit around it. Now look at how similar the force of electricity is. So the force of electricity operates on electrical charges. So that if you've got a positive charge and a negative charge, they're going to be attracted to each other. If you've got a positive charge and a positive charge, they're going to repel. And if you have a negative charge and a negative charge, they're going to repel. But what is the nucleus composed of? The nucleus of the atom has both protons, which have what charge? Positive. And then the neutrons, which are neutral. And then the electrons, which are in orbit around it, have what charge? Negative. Opposites attract. So just like mass number of the planet is attracted to the mass of the star, the electron is attracted to the nucleus of the atom, and then that's what makes it go into an orbit. Now, this is a classical explanation for what goes on, because you should know what really causes a planet to go in orbit around a star. Was it the force of gravity? No. It was the bending of space-time, and we called this the general theory of relativity, which is pretty complicated and involves calculus. Well, it's kind of the same way with atoms, that really it's not just this force of electricity. It's not, so the electrons are not in orbit like little planets. That's what Sir Isaac Newton would have said. But what's really happening is we have to go and use a different theory called quantum mechanics in order to explain how atoms really operate. Now, for the most part, though, we can really explain things classically in here. And then if you're really interested in this stuff, go ahead and take well, first you'd have to learn some calculus, but then after that, then you could take quantum mechanics and see if you can understand that. Also, I think it's kind of interesting that if you've got the nucleus is positive, so that would be Q1, and the electron is negative, so that'd be Q2. And then what happens when you multiply a positive number times a negative number? You get a negative number. So do you notice that we could put a negative sign in front of that formula, and then it matches up exactly with the formula for gravity? So they're both attractive as long as they have opposite charges, and that's what happens inside the atom. Okay, so that's the force that's going to hold the atom together, but it also holds atoms together. So let me just show you this before we go to our next segment. Excuse me. Okay, so imagine that you've got an atom here that has a positive nucleus, and then over here is its negative electron, and then over here you've got another atom that has a positive nucleus, and then it's got its electron. So what happens is if you've got two atoms that are getting close to each other, can you see that this negative electron is going to be attracted to this positive nucleus, and then this negative electron would be attracted to this positive nucleus, and then the two atoms would come together. Is there anything wrong with that? Well, you might be saying, but yeah, but wouldn't this negative be repelled by this negative? And wouldn't this charge be repelling this charge? Yeah. So what that means is that these two atoms will get to a certain distance from each other because they're being attracted, but then they'll stay there. So they won't go in any further because of that repulsive force. So what we've just created is a molecule. So like for example, if this is oxygen and this is oxygen over here, then the two of them go together to make O2, and then that's what you breathe. So we've just made a molecule by putting those two atoms together. Okay, in our next segment, we're now going to talk about where do the electrons live inside the atom. I'll see you in just a few moments.